Be honest. Did you realise that there was a difference between home education and homeschooling? Me neither, until I put my foot in it and I found out the hard way. So to stop you from doing that and to stop you from having to go off and research it like I did, stay tuned for the next few minutes, and I'm just going to be covering really quickly what the main differences are, just so that you don't offend anybody like I did. So homeschooling is probably a term that most people are familiar with. The term comes from people who basically replicate school at home. So in other countries, apart from the UK, there are strict regulations that say that if you don't send your children to school, that you have to follow a framework of some kind or have intervention from a governing body to make sure that your children are receiving the same level of education at the same rate and the same pace that they would if they were in a mainstream school setting. Now, whether you home educate or whether you homeschool, chances are that anybody and everybody probably refers to you as a homeschooler. I personally don't have an issue with that. I'm not precious over whether people call us home educators or homeschoolers, but I found that some people are. And so stay tuned for the next couple of minutes, and I'm just going to be running through really briefly what the differences are and why I think people who do homeschool do get a little bit peeved off if they're called home educators, and likewise when people home educate, why they get a little bit peeved off if you call them homeschoolers. So let's start with homeschooling. So if somebody tells you that they are homeschooling, chances are that they follow some sort of curriculum. Now, that could be the curriculum that's laid out by the government. It could be a curriculum that they've purchased. It could be a curriculum like Montessori or something like that. It could be a nature curriculum. But chances are homeschooling families maybe have a timetable, they maybe have work that they plan and schedule week to week that they like to get done. They do tend to follow more of a plan. Lots of homeschoolers are aiming maybe towards their children sitting GCSEs or A-levels. They may also buy the testing packs to kind of monitor how their children are progressing. And sometimes this can be a parent's choice in the beginning to do that, so that they feel that they're keeping up to speed with what their children are doing, maybe in case they go into a school setting. Sometimes it works for the children. Some children find that they like structured work, they like to know what they're doing, they like to have some sort of a plan to follow. They're quite maybe independent learners, so they like to just be able to go and pick up the next thing where they're at because they prefer to do things more independently. So homeschooling can work for lots of people for lots of different reasons. So I say, if somebody tells you that they're homeschooling, then they're generally doing one or more of those things that I have just mentioned. Personally, we don't homeschool. We fall into, if you want to be technical, the home education category. So home educators like myself don't follow any form of strict curriculum. We don't plan or schedule work week to week. We don't have certain workbooks or certain resources that we use all of the time. We kind of mix and match things up. Neither of my children have ever sat a test of any kind, so we don't measure them, we don't monitor them. I don't check where they're at for different subjects at different points. You tend to find that home educating families don't really buy into the whole your children might be falling behind, your children might be in front. It is a little bit more of probably a relaxed way of doing it. And it's the whole entire point for some people why they don't actually send their children to school. So the whole ethos of home education is that it can be very child-led. It can mean more play-based learning, it can mean more hands-on learning, it can mean different types of learning, so learning in real time. So maybe, like to give you an example, for telling the time, my children, instead of sitting doing that with a workbook or with maybe one of the orchard games or something, we just have clocks in the house that are the time teacher clocks, and the kids just tell the time. So if I say to them, oh, what time is it? They'll go and have a look and tell me what time it is. If they ask what time we're going out and I say we're going out at 10:30, then they just wait until it gets to 10:30, and they've just learned the time in real time through real life, just doing real things really. Now, one of the main reasons why, excuse me, I think homeschoolers get quite annoyed at being called home educators is because we started off homeschooling and it requires an awful lot of planning. It can require a lot of money because you're buying resources and you're constantly keeping up to date with different things that are changing. Again, even if you do like the Montessori and things like that, and you don't physically purchase a curriculum, it can still be really, really time consuming to do lesson plans, prepare what you're doing for the week. Sometimes it's hard just to get the children to actually be engaged and want to do that work. Likewise, you can have children who work at a much quicker pace, which means that instead of maybe having 1 week's worth of work to prepare in advance, you're doing like a week and a half at a time. So I think because of the commitment and the expense and how difficult homeschooling can actually be, I think that they do get quite precious over the fact that they are doing that and they're not home educating. Likewise, home educators sometimes just get a little bit precious over the term because their whole ethos of not sending their children to school is that they don't want them to follow a curriculum. They don't want them to be tied to a set structure. They don't want them to be working to a timetable. They don't want them to sit tests or be measured. They do want to, experience the same more hands-on and play-based learning. So when you call a home educator a homeschooler, some people may get a little bit offended because they think, well, if I wanted them to do school, then I would just send them to school. The home reason that we home educate is because we don't want them following that pattern. So as I say, I'm not precious over it. Some people are. Just a little bit of something to bear in mind if you go to like a new meetup or a new group, or you may be new to home education, just so that really you know that there is a difference, you know what that difference is, and you don't go semi-offending someone who was really actually quite lovely about it. And it did prompt me, as I say, to find out about it as well. So it wasn't totally wasted putting my foot in it. But hopefully it might just save you the trouble.